Tiffany Schuster with Schuster Media and here to host three amazing women in the stop motion industry. I'm a contractor and co-curator for the animation script to screen exhibit at the Leica Oswego Festival of the Arts, held this June 20th through the 22nd. And as a co-curator with Brian Capote from Mosma this year, I have been learning so much about stop motion. This podcast, for those of you who are thinking about stop motion as a possible career, a super fan and ready to geek out, or you're already in the stop motion industry and you just want to hear what the other studios are up to. Today is your lucky day. I know I'm a lucky one to have you girls here. Giving us a behind-the-curtain moment, we have...
Hi, I'm Katie Mello. I work at HouseSpecial, and I'm head of puppet fabrication.
I'm Emma Van Halsema. I am a set dresser at Leica.
I'm Whitney Schmerber. I work at ShadowMachine as the art department production supervisor.
Many in the industry share that stop motion community is like one big family, a unique and special group. So I'm thinking this podcast is your community campfire. Some topics we'll be chatting about today. How did you guys get in the industry?
I'll go first. I grew up in Portland in the 1980s, and Will Vinton was the big thing. And I loved Star Wars, and I loved Will Vinton, and that's just what I wanted to do. And I went to the University of Oregon, and I was getting ready to graduate, and I knew that Will Vinton was in Portland. So I basically drove there and basically explained to them how they should have an internship program, and I should be the intern. And they were kind of like, well, we have a TV show coming up and we need to train people. So if you kind of figure all that out and do all the paperwork, then sure, why not? So I was like, heck yeah. And that's what I did. And I've stuck around ever since.
That's awesome. Emma?
Man, I'm about to show y'all how big of a nerd I am. But when I was in 5th grade, I saw the Fellowship of the Ring. And I was like, whoa, I've never seen anything like that. It was the first time I felt so immersed in like a movie experience. And I became obsessed with watching the behind the scenes. And I remember one part of the behind the scenes where like there's fabricators making the chainmail, and them talking about like, oh, they were making so much chainmail that their fingertips, like their fingerprints wore off. Oh. And I was like, I want to do that. Like, I didn't know, is that a job? I want to do that. And so I got it in my brain from that moment on. I was like, I think people do that for a living. And I just kind of got more and more into film as I grew up. And luckily, being from North Carolina, there was a really great North Carolina film school called North Carolina School of Arts. And I got in there and majored in production design. And from there, just kind of got more tunnel vision into, I want to work smaller and smaller. And there were some other animation students who needed people to make their sets. And so I was like, yeah, I'll make your set. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll just try it out. And, making leading for stained glass with like hot glue and then painting it, I was like, oh yeah, this is cool. Like making a whole world. So from there on, I kind of made a small portfolio and then started to hear about Leica. Being from North Carolina, I don't know much about Oregon. And I was like, oh, I guess there's like the studio in Oregon that does stop motion. And I applied for an internship, and I got an internship at their old sister company called Leica House, which is now HouseSpecial. And that's actually where I met Katie, and she was one of my mentors. And yeah, I've been in the industry ever since, building my way up to set dressing now. So yeah.
And you worked on Walking Dead.
Yeah, I skipped that. I was like, oh, stop motion. Yeah, I did work on The Walking Dead in between graduating college and coming out here. But I was sitting in Atlanta traffic in Georgia, just like, I don't know if I want to be around all this zombie stuff right now. It was great, but it was just like, I don't know.
And the humidity?
The humidity, I'm a southerner, so I'm used to it, but yeah, I was just like, I don't know, this zombie stuff isn't really working for me right now. And luckily I got, you know, House kind of like brought me into their.
Well, you had an excellent portfolio.
Oh, thanks. But it's all like, yeah, it was all just like messing around with, you know, I thought it was like cool stuff, and I just made stuff and it worked out. So yeah,
That's great.
Yeah.
Whitney?
I did not get my start in film. I got my start in stage management. I really loved working with artists and supporting artists, and trying to find ways to create work environments and cultures that really supported artists from the ground up. And we sort of did that in opera stage management, and I traveled all over the country working for companies from Anchorage, Alaska to Houston, Texas to the Kennedy Center. And I did that for a little bit more than a decade, and I was just worn out. I think that the last year I filed taxes in 7 states, and they were all 1099s, and I was like, this is not sustainable. And my husband grew up out here in Oregon on a blueberry farm down in Kaiser, down by Salem. And he was like, let's go to Oregon. Like, really, let's live near family. And so went out there and just sent my fine arts resume to every organization that would accept a fine arts resume in the whole of Greater Portland area. And I got a call from LAIKA, from somebody in HR. And they said, hey, you got a great resume, but you're coming from the theater world. That's kind of a tricky transition. So we'd love to give you a shot, but you're going to have to go through a bunch of interviews to really prove it, because you're not coming in with any film experience at all. And I said, okay. And after many, many rounds of interviews, I got a job working at Leica on box trolls, and that was just sort of the start of it. I was an AD on box trolls, and it's very similar to stage management in that there's black curtains everywhere, and it's dark, and safety is paramount, and you're dealing with a lot of ergonomics for people and just trying to make an art form that can be really hard on the body, something that's really sustainable for the long term. Mm-hmm. And just really fell in love with it. And then I was working a lot of hours and was like, I'd really like to find something that feels a little bit more manageable for me. And I got a job working as the coordinator in the model shop. And that kind of changed my perspective on film. And I knew from that moment on that I really wanted to be in the art department for my whole career. And worked on box trolls and Kubo, and then went off and did the stay-at-home mom thing for 4.5 years, and then came back into the industry on Pinocchio. And yeah, it's been a wild ride, but I feel like it's still just starting, and I'm meeting new people every day and learning new things and using skills that I didn't think would be applicable. And it's been really encouraging to sort of work my way through the career and find my home, and know that, like, that's not where I started. Mm-hmm. Where I started my career, I thought that was really what I wanted for my life. And through the course of events, it was like, no, that's not really actually what I want. And now I really feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be.
That's awesome.
I love that. So knowing that there's 3 different studios here, give us what a typical day looks like for HouseSpecial to Leica to ShadowMachine.
So we mostly do commercials at HouseSpecial, and I am head of puppets. So if, say, a commercial came through and they wanted, I don't know, a talking peanut, so then we would basically, everyone would talk about what it needs to do, what its actions need to be, and, I'd run through maybe ideas for how to make it. And then once that kind of was a go, then either myself and my partner Margaret would be just making the puppet on our own, or we would have a team of people. And there's all these different processes. So doing all the processes in communication with the other departments and animators to get a final product that's ready, like on time for animation. With kind of like, it's not a day on a day-to-day. Every day is different, and every job is different, and every puppet is different, and you're always learning new stuff.
And not every day you're shooting.
Correct.
There's a lot of prep and building the puppet.
Always troubleshooting. There's always new stuff. And it definitely builds on itself, but you're always different. There is no such thing as a typical day.
Maybe that's what makes it fun and interesting.
Yeah. Good for your brain.
Yeah, it is.
Mm-hmm.
So we tell ourselves.
How about for Leica?
For Leica, being a set dresser there, is it's pretty amazing. It's interesting because I'm thinking back about my time set dressing on different projects, and kind of like what Katie was saying, each project's so different in itself. And so this is my first project at Leica. It is Wildwood, and in dressing at Leica, it's been like you really are like part of this like inner like clockwork. You're like one of many cogs making this huge.
Will you tell me what a set dresser does?
Yes, I'm getting there,
Oh, I'm
Katie.
sorry.
I'm getting there. Katie taught me, so she's like an aunt to me. So, but anyways, so in that, being a set dresser at Leica, it's very much like you're kind of like the extended or like right hand like helper to the art director. So like the art director is really doing so much stuff up above, out of the scenes, and then the set dresser is making sure to carry out the art director's visions, the production designer's visions on the floor. So we're kind of the last part of this huge art department relay race where like everyone from model shop to scenic to landscapes has made all these amazing like chairs or curtains and painted them beautifully, and they're finally delivered to set. And this is like, it's been like years of fabricating to get these pieces to set. And the set dresser, then it's our turn to fabricate the scene in a way. So like we have concept art that is kind of our blueprint, and then we know what the art director is looking for and what they want, and we work with camera and lighting and compose the scene to what you're seeing when you're watching the movie. Mm-hmm. It is kind of like, I think of it like a little miniature theater set every time. You're like, it's so cool. You get to like dress foreground elements, midground elements, background elements to make this world come alive that that the viewer gets to see, that the audience gets to see eventually. And it's really cool you're on the front lines of like being 1 foot in art department, 1 foot on with a stage crew, and it's just like so fun, like lots of problem solving, like working hand in hand with animators. And what did they need? They need access to get into the set, so set dressers help facilitate that for them. Working with camera and lighting, sometimes camera needs access to sets, so you help get access so the camera can get further into a set. Sometimes lighting, they get a note that says like, this part of the set or this prop is too bright, or what we say, too hot. And so, set dressing can work with lighting to tone it down with paint or pan pastels or something else. So it's really crafty. You're really on your toes a lot. And you're juggling probably about 10 sets at the same time. So you're not just focused on one, and it's really, you're moving around a lot. You really get your steps in. My average steps are like 18,000 a day out. Like,
wow.
Yeah, it's
Amazing.
It's huge, but yeah, it's really fun. It really does keep you on your toes.
A typical shoot day is about 10 sets.
Yeah, like full on production. Once production's like really ramped up, which could be about like maybe a year and a half of, that's like middle of the like full shoot time of a movie, like maybe year and a half, the middle of it, you would have about, each set dresser would have about, I would say about 5 to 10 sets that they're juggling. 10 would probably be like pretty max. But so you're also kind of keeping continuity for the film. Like maybe I'm set dressing a scene that is early on in the movie, but the same prop is later on in the movie, but it's a duplicate of a prop that's being shot on 2 different sets at the same time, and maybe the same prop it gets aged or is damaged in some way. So I have to make sure like the more damaged prop is on the correct set, to make sure that, you know, as we're shooting, somehow the props or the way the set is goes in line with the storyline, and make sure that there's just all these tiny moving pieces, literally and figuratively, that you have to like keep track of to make sure like the movie is just looking the best it can be. And it's pretty cool. Yeah, I really love it. It's high energy, high stress, high reward. That's what I would say set dressing is. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well put. Whitney.
A typical day in the life of me is usually in front of a computer. So I manage the schedules from concept art all the way down to delivery, and working with the master scheduler, he'll make something called a one line. The one line is where he takes every single shot in the project and sees how long each one is and schedules that out. And when he schedules that out, it allows me to see how many duplicates we need of a set. You know, when you think about a movie, sometimes like there'll be, for example, a dining room, and maybe half the movie takes place in that dining room. Well, we wouldn't build just one dining room. If half the movie took place in the dining room, we'd build 8 dining rooms. And so what you were saying about continuity in set dressing, it's critical, because you can't just rely on that one set to work the whole time. And oftentimes, because of puppet availability or asset availability or animator availability, we have to shoot out of order. So we have all these like little tools that we can use to execute the movie and get it through the finish line. But it kind of takes collaboration from everyone and sort of looking at it from all sides. You know, like I really rely on the puppet department to help us with props in some instances, because sometimes they're attached to the puppet. Sometimes it's something that the puppet finds on the ground and then it's suddenly part of their costume and it integrates in. And like, when is that happening? And you know, how much time does the puppet team need to execute that change before that thing can come back out onto set? And where's that animator going to go during that time? Because you don't want any wasted time with that animator. And so I'm sort of working with the master scheduler to sort of sort that out. How many duplicates do we need? What's our total set count? Breaking the script down, going through and itemizing out every single prop that's called out in the script. And then same thing in the animatic. On Pinocchio, we built 99 sets for that movie. And we built just over 15,000 props. And that was from like drops of tea coming off of a tea bag all the way to like the giant, what we call BA Pinocchio, which you'll see part of it at the Leica Oswego Festival of the Arts this year that Tiffany tagged. But, you know, the art assets are sort of, they run the gamut in size. And so it's my responsibility to catalog all of that. I lean into Autodesk Flow, which used to be called ShotGrid, Shotgun. Yeah. It's gone through like so many different iterations, but it basically is our catalog, is how we use it. So it sort of inventories everything. And then, you know, from then when we have all of those plans, then we start hiring up. And so we're hiring up concept artists, set designers, prop designers, graphic designers, look dev artists. Look dev artists are really important because each movie has a different style. And so, you know, if you think about Pinocchio is made out of wood. Yes, this is true. And he was carved by a carpenter whose house is also made of wood. And all the tables and chairs are made of wood, and the floor is made of wood, and all of his tools are made of wood. So how do you make your main character, who is made of wood, stand out in an environment that is also wood? And so in look development, we make hundreds of samples of wood sometimes and hold it up against the puppet. What's going to make this puppet really pop? Because we want the art to support the puppet. You know, that's like the main character. We don't want the art to detract from the puppet unless it's, you know, we're going for like a beauty shot or something, in which case we want to. And so I hire all those people up. We start designing, and then I'm sort of working with the production designer and the art directors and the other HODs in the company, head of animation, the director of photography, head of rigging. All of these different components, all these different people come together to sort of solve the issues, and then we start building the assets. And we'll build out all of those assets and try to get them all delivered on time. And then once things are out on the unit, just sort of keeping track of the people. making sure that they feel seen and heard, making sure that if they're raising flags of like, hey, I'm not going to hit that deadline, there's no repercussion for that. I just want you to flag it with me. I've got all these tools and ways that we can figure that out. I don't want you to take on that stress. Give it to me. Let me help figure that out. So it's all about just sort of taking the problems away from the individuals, just so that collaboratively we can all succeed.
Gotcha. And you guys had a recent exhibit at MoMA, and the word collaboration was actually present in the exhibit. I love that.
Yeah, we're really trying to do things a little differently. We're really trying to lean into openness and honesty and transparency. We're really trying to lean into psychological safety. These are things that we think should be industry standards. And, every day we're just trying to take that next right step, make that next right choice that sort of keeps us on the right path.
I love that.
It's amazing.
Our next question, what has been the most fun to the most epic fail of a project that has given you guys a huge learning curve?
Oh, what a question.
It is a serious question.
I'm like, most epic fail.
I can start if you want.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll brew a little bit.
Yeah, okay. So going back to Pinocchio, we started the movie in 2019. We all remember that world.
Oh yeah, pandemic. We didn't even have an exhibit that year.
It was a really strange time to be alive. And so we started the movie, best of intentions. We got all of our people, and then March of 2020 came around. We were sort of watching the news, we're watching the stuff coming, and it was like, okay, we got all the HODs together, and we were like, we cannot risk the safety and well-being of our people. So we made the decision to send everybody home, and I was like, well, I still want everyone paid. I don't want this to be the end. None of us at ShadowMachine want this to be the end. This is a challenge, but we're gonna find a way through this. And so all of the different HODs got together and found a way to set up a remote system. So in art department, we were using our phones. And when people had something that they were done with, they were just working in their basements or wherever, a kitchen counter, I was working on my kitchen counter. They would put a prop that they had ready for review, and they'd take a picture of it and they'd send it off to us so that we could review it and then send it back to them. And then when they finished it, they'd bring it to the art office, which was our quarantine, because I don't know if you remember that, but at a certain point in the process, they said, based on the materials that something's made out of, it has to quarantine for a certain amount of time. And that's anywhere from 2 hours to 48 hours based on the material it's made out of. Well, we use everything in our department. We use all the materials. So we used the office as quarantine. We had Post-its on everything that was like, this asset can't leave until here. We're on the phone with people. Okay, who's going to drive this asset over there? We had drivers that were moving things around. And if you remember in Pinocchio, when they're walking through the village, going to the church and back, anytime they're in there, there's 27 buildings that are part of that kit. And each one of those buildings stopped at 13 different people's houses, from cutting wood to final scenic pass before it was brought back to the studio. And we all just sort of linked arms and we were like, let's keep our jobs, let's all just really try to be honest about where we're at. We encouraged teams to go onto video calls and leave their mics open, because then it simulates what it was like to be in the studio. So you hear somebody cough or sneeze and you're like, oh my God, another human is here.
A real person.
A real person.
Did everyone have to wear masks?
We eventually came back, and we had a really intense masking policy, but everybody leaned in. We had to do social distancing, so we were hanging out Plex between workspaces, and some people continued to work from home because we work in a pretty small building, so we can only push people so far away from each other before we just run out of space. But it took us, I think we were out for 4 months, and when we came back, we were about 9 months behind, because there were, you're so much more efficient in the studio. You lose so much time when you're having to do things remotely this way. I mean, we even had animators setting up studios in their homes to shoot content so that we could keep the gears turning. And we saw we saw the best and worst of each other. there were so many phone calls where people would just break down crying, and they're just like, I just can't do this anymore. But they were willing to come to the table and be honest about what they were feeling because they just wanted to talk about it. And it was really remarkable because it was like we became, I mean, stop motion's a family, right? We've been talking about this a lot. But going through COVID and working through COVID on something like Pinocchio, it forced us to be even more of a family because we were each other's lifelines. Like, you know, we are the community. You know, like when there's no projects happening, you kind of feel like you've lost your whole community.
Trauma bonding.
Trauma bonding. So much trauma bonding. And so it was, you know, at the time, it was like the worst thing that had ever happened to any of us, you know, and at the time it felt like an epic fail, you know. And then Mark Gustafson, who was our co-director, got on to a phone call one day, and he knew that like morale was down. People were getting tired and finding hard ways to just having a hard time keeping their chin up. And he gave this really beautiful speech. He said, you know, sometimes when you're getting ready for a journey, they have these great big boats. You get a big boat and you get all of your stuff and you put all your stuff on your boat and you make sure you have all of the positions, you know, got all the people. And then you're like, we're ready. We're going to set off. And you go out to sea. But then the water goes out. And you've got this boat and you've got all the things that you need to do this, but you have no water because the tide has gone out. So what do? You get off the boat and you lift the boat and you carry it. And that sort of became our mantra. It was like, you know, we are still prepared regardless of what happens in the environment around us. And we, as long as we lean into each other and accept that vulnerability is just part of our everyday now and forever, we'll get to the other side of it, you know. And I think when we finally got around to watching Pinocchio as a family, when we'd finished it, the premiere that they did, it was so emotional because it was like we were watching the last 20 years of our lives. You know how we all look back at COVID and we're like, oh my God, that was only how many years?
Yeah, you're like, let's
feels
not talk
like
about it.
2 lifetimes ago. But it turned out to be, you know, one of the most rewarding experiences of any of our lives because we were put in a really tough situation. We were forced to come up with new ways to support each other when you couldn't just go and give someone else a hug. And it gave us a new vocabulary. It gave us a new way to communicate with each other. And it bonded us in a way that, like, now when people walk in the door, I can tell whether or not they're having a good day. You know, and I think as a manager and as a leader of a department, that's so important that you kind of know where every single person is mentally in your department and how they're walking in the door every day. And it's just we keep reaping the rewards of the conflict that we made it through.
I totally agree with everything you said. I was on Wendell and Wild, which was shooting at the same time as Pinocchio, and we were kind of on a really similar schedule, and so we had a very similar COVID trials going, and this similar work from home and the similar, like, we were just kind of all here, like, on this movie, and now we're not. And we were just starting to get to, like, vibe with each other, get to know each other, and get to know this project. And, I know this isn't quite what you asked, like, kind of going in. It was just almost like such a, like, yeah, we don't want to go through COVID again. No. But going through that type of, you know, pandemic, and kind of having this newfound family to support you, was so beautiful. And I didn't even, you know, I wasn't working on Pinocchio, and but, you know, it was like we almost, like, even from movie to movie, we knew it was like kindred spirits. And same with, like, House, like, so many good friends at House and everything. It was just, like, the pandemic almost made the community stronger. And like what when he was saying about family, you know, we're probably gonna say, you know, so much as, like, big family so many times, but it really did, like, you can really feel a difference, like, 2019 to now, the way, it's like the way, you know, a friend, coworker might be at work and they're like, I'm just having a really hard day or whatever, and you're like, what do you need? Like, I got you. Like, do you need a minute? Like, it's very supportive and it's really beautiful. piggybacking off of that again, talking about Wendell Wild. I started as a scenic artist on Wendell Wild, and then halfway through, it was just we had to catch up, so we needed more set dressers. So I became a set dresser on Wendell Wild, and so one of the worst. I learned a lot from this day, but one of the worst experiences of me. I'm just trying really hard. I'm just like, I'm working with Anthony Scott. He was like he's a legend. He's worked on Nightmare for Christmas and Gumby and all that, and the nicest guy. But I was like, oh my gosh, I really want to like make sure I do a great job set dressing on Anthony Scott's set. And he's like the most chill person, but I didn't know that at the time. So I'm like, I'm working, trying to dress the set, and then on this particular shot that we're setting out for, the puppet, Kat's dad in Wendell Wild, has to rip a poster off of the wall. And that's like it's kind of technical. You wouldn't think it would be technical, but because it's stop motion, the material of the poster has to like be able to support itself as the animator's pulling it down to make it look like it's ripping and holding its own weight in a way. So it's made really specifically printed on like cinefoil, which is like kind of like thicker aluminum foil. They use a lot in, it's like black wrap cinefoil. They use it a lot in film in general. But I was like, okay, I'm going to make sure that, this poster is stuck on this wall because I don't want it to move, because you don't want things to move in stop motion as an animator's animating. And I'm like, it's going to be great. It's going to be stuck on this wall. I pre-cut it so he can pull it down. And I get called in. It was like it was my first time set dressing on a feature. So it was like, I get called in mid-shot, and Anthony's like, which is like kind of a big deal because the set is active. It's hot, as we say. So it's like, you don't want to disturb anything. And he's like, I really can't get this poster off the wall. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So together, I mean, it took like, we got through the shot, but it took like the two of us trying. I really taped it to the wall. I think I used like heavy duty carpet tape. I was like so nervous to do a good job that I actually did like the worst thing you could do by like really adhering something to a set. And but he's like the nicest guy, but we got through it. And he's also an amazing animator, so he was able to make like my mistake work out. And it was just a high stress shot. I was just like, it worked out, but that was like one of my most like embarrassing days. But you learn from that, and now I'm like, oh, I have my like, I know my tapes, so well. I know, yeah. And Anthony and I laugh about it now, so it's all good. But yeah, that was like probably one of the most like gut-wrenching days of set dressing. Just like, oh no, I set him up for failure.
That could be on a blooper reel, right?
Yeah. Me and Anthony just like tugging at the paper. Yeah.
So epic fails and high highs and low lows. I learned years ago that I like commercials because they're problem solving and fast and furious, and if you don't like what you're doing, it's going to be over in 3 weeks. So it'll be fun.
It's true.
So there's so many high highs and so many low lows, and I just, both of them I just have to put out of my mind and move forward, and you've learned something. So actually, I don't have cool examples, but I will say my thing that I say to myself, because I make puppets for a living, stop motion puppets for a living. There's not very many people in the world that when I do something awesome, I'm like, I am literally the best today in the whole world. But the converse of that, of course, is when you have messed something up, then you're like, well, I literally am the worst person at my job of anyone in the entire world today. But both of them, you just have to let it go and learn what you can from it.
That's so true. I totally relate.
Mm-hmm. That's a practice that we all have to lean into every single day.
Yeah.
Like, let it go. Just be Elsa.
It's like, yeah. And like something I have to tell myself is like, it's dolls.
Yep.
It is.
Yep. Perspective.
Doll houses. How lucky am I? Yeah.
So, what stories are not being told in stop motion that you would want to personally see more of?
I say only animals wearing clothes. No more humans. No more human puppets. There's actors that you can pay to do that. Only animals wearing clothes.
It is probably the most fun for you to make.
Yes, it is.
We were joking earlier.
I guess they could be naked.
Yeah.
That's fine too. I'll accept. I
Yeah,
will
animals,
also
just
totally
animals.
accept naked animals.
Yeah. Then you have to make sure.
I know, right? Like, yeah.
We were joking earlier, like horror. Like, where's the stop motion
Yeah.
horror?
That stop motion movie is really fun.
Yeah. But I think like overall, like the industry's getting, or the content that's coming out, whether it's like more mainstream or independent with stop motion, is becoming more inclusive, which is really awesome to see. Like, it was amazing working on Wendell and Wild, having like trans representation, people of color, and like really like having conversations as a crew, just being like, okay, like let's make sure we're doing this as right as we can. And it's cool to see it out now and seeing people so excited about like seeing someone that looks like themselves on screen. And it's like, it's so cool to see, and it makes you want to be like, yeah, let's like try to do more of these projects. But I do think that it is getting better. I'm seeing more overall representation and stop motion on screen and off screen as the crew and all that.
It's been nice to see it come away from Christmas.
Yeah.
Because for a long time, stop motion was only Christmas. So it's nice. And now even Wendell, but like Nightmare, it's also worked its way to Halloween, but also it's working its way to other stories.
Yeah.
It's not exciting.
Yeah, it's so true.
It's so true.
Yeah. We need to get that Easter storyline.
Yeah, I'll do it. That's
or the St. Patrick's. Yeah.
Yeah, at ShadowMachine, we're currently working on a horror short film, which is unfortunately all I can say.
Yeah.
But we just finished a couple seasons of Tiny Chef, which is a preschool show, which is definitely worth checking out if you have kids that are in preschool. My daughter loves it. All three of my kids love it, but my daughter really loves it, and she's 10. So shout out to the Tiny Chef out there. But now that we're doing a horror short film, it's interesting just seeing how the demeanor of the people in the building has changed, because we're not making preschool animation anymore. We're dealing with blood and gore, and it's brought a completely different side out of people. And I agree, more horror.
Yeah.
Horror in stop motion is fun.
That's not my go-to genre, but
yet. Yeah.
I think of Chucky. Like, is that a stop motion doll that's
I think
horror?
he was animatronic. I don't think he was ever stop motion.
Okay.
But you're in the neighborhood.
Or like a Little Otik.
Oh, yeah.
Was
Or
it
the
John-
old Tool
John?
videos. Those old Tool videos were like so creepy. Neat.
Because stop motion's already a little like uncanny
Yeah.
and or not uncanny. Yeah, I guess
It's the
so.
uncanny
Yeah,
valley.
it's a little unnatural. You're like, it looks real, but it's moving a little strange. So we're just like, more horror. But there's the cool thing about stop motion is like you're creating a world. You can
Oh, yeah.
And
literally
it can be anything.
And it
do
can be
anything.
anything.
Yeah.
There were dark moments in Coraline.
Oh
and
yeah.
I'm
Honestly,
sure
that
there
movie
are
still scares me.
those
Yeah.
button black eyes.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be cool to see like more genres explored alongside with continuing on with more representation.
So, for people getting in this industry, male, female, what kind of educational track would you recommend to youth?
That is a very good question.
Well, I think as I have a son in Portland Public Schools right now, and in high school, I have two sons. One's in high school. They are offering amazing animation classes, and there's so much available now. And your iPhone is as good as many old cameras used to be. And there's so much access, and there's editing software, and there's so much stuff and classes on the internet. Whereas I watched the exact same Lord of the Rings documentary. I know exactly what you're talking about. There was so little stuff, and I would just consume all of it that I can. And now there's so much available to people, and available. It's accessible in your own home, and I think there's a lot more interest in it. And like the public library here in Portland they have a whole makers space, and I think they offer stuff. Like there's just so much more available, and summer camps are doing a lot of Lego stuff. There's just so much available now, and I think if you have an interest in it, like actually just doing it, because you learn so much by doing stuff. And I think that's so available now to people in a way that it didn't used to be.
Gotcha.
I have to remind myself to just be like, you just do it. Just if you're interested, just do it. It will like
Practice. And
it will
try
just
and-
you're going to be noodling it out in your brain as you're working on it. But yeah, totally agree. Yeah, it's like I wish I had access to all that growing up. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, if you're interested, I would just, you know, I kind of obsessed over it. I was just like, I want to know it all, you know? And it's just learn about what makes you feel excited and, you know, and there's so many different, if you want to get into film, if you want to get into stop motion, there are so many different jobs within it. Like
Yeah, for sure.
we're like, you know, in a pie chart, like one little sliver, the three of us here. It's like there's so many different opportunities. So like
When you don't have to be like a quote unquote talented artist.
yeah.
And that I think is such a barrier to entry in people's minds. I can't draw, but I'm sort of an engineering side of things, and so I can sort of see that part. And then you have organizational people, and some people in this industry cannot tie their shoe by themselves.
But we need it.
Yeah,
we need it.
all these different places are so important, and it's such a collaboration, and it takes all the different kinds of people. And yeah, like if you feel like I want to do this, but I'm not good enough XYZ, that's not correct. Like there is a place for you. If you're interested in it, you're excited about it, you're passionate about it, and you want to work hard,
Yeah.
there's a place for you.
Absolutely. I mean, if you think about art department, for example, I've got taxidermy artists, engineers, just general tinkerers, people who do mold and casting. I mean, there's people who have never worked in film before that we're hiring in our department because they can weld or solder, or they're really good taking K&S metal and turning it into really beautiful railings and things like that. So, you know, you don't even really have to have a background in film to get into film either. You know, we need a lot of people all the way, you know, from PAs. We need people that are willing to just sort of run around and help us solve facility issues.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's like it's a micro world, and everybody is represented in there. Everything from managers and makers and people that are supporting. But yeah, it takes a village, really, and it takes people from all walks of life to make stop motion something that really leaves an imprint on people. You know, if everyone that's coming to the art form is all coming from the same place, you don't have the creative solutions necessary to keep the charm of stop motion. Yeah. You know, it's the fact that everybody's coming to this with a different vantage point and finding different ways to solve the same problem that keeps it innovative. That, you know, from one movie to the other, we're not going to solve the same problem the same way, because maybe on this project we made a puppet this way because that's what we felt like we needed, and then we got 3/4 of the way through and we should have made a different decision. Well, we're going to remember that, and the next time around we're going to change what we do based on that. You know, every single project in stop motion is a learning opportunity and a chance for everybody to sort of grow and develop in different ways and to learn from each other. I think that's something that keeps me coming back, is that I learn new things every day because there's so many people that are coming to this from different angles or from different places and from different backgrounds and experiences. And it broadens your horizons, even though you're like, we're in a tiny studio with dark curtains. We can't even like see each other's eyes because there's not really that many lights in here, but it's still it's so collaborative, you know?
I think there's the feeling that it's directors and animators, period.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's so not the case.
It's so not true.
It is a big relay race. It's a big
absolutely.
relay race.
Yeah.
Are there local resources that you guys have, like go-tos? I've heard there's social networks like Women in Film, or OregonFilm.org has like a resource list if you're scouting at places. Are there other resources that I'm not thinking about?
Internships.
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 Oh, I mean, preaching to the choir. I'm a product of a Leica. I am the product of a Leica internship. Yeah, I mean, that is a great, like, that honestly, that internship launched my career. And, you know, I'm just like so lucky. And there's so many, like I think they just finished an internship posting, but yeah, there's so many internships posted, not just at Leica, but like on Wendell we had interns. I don't know about Pinocchio and
Yeah, we didn't really on Pinocchio. We deal with some space constraints at ShadowMachine that limits the number of people that we can put in the building. So, we're really hopeful to have, maybe soon we'll have a real big project that allows us to have internships again, but we'd love to. I think there's so much about stop motion that you learn on the job, and I think that's the big thing I would want to throw out there as something to resonate with people too, is that you can read all the books, you can watch all of the YouTube videos, you can go to all the classes, but until you are in the studio, in the unit, working with people and seeing how that process works, you're never really going to understand fully. It's good to get all the skills and be ready, but these internships are, from like a company standpoint, we see that as an opportunity to sort of train up the next generation. During Pinocchio, I think we had 7 feature films in stop motion that were happening here in Portland. We were the stop motion capital of the world.
Golden era.
It was really the golden era of stop motion here in Portland, and it's not over. Let's manifest that it's not over. But yeah, it's we really need to train up more people, because during that time, what we realized was, with all these studios going at the same time, we don't have enough people for the jobs. And we want that problem. Like, that's a good problem to have. If you have the resources to be able to do internships, because then you can train people up, and especially with how close the studios are and how we share people. And, the stop motion community, like the people that work at ShadowMachine don't just work at ShadowMachine. They also do some stints at LAIKA and at HouseSpecial and wherever else there's work in town. And we'll get back to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I like, this is kind of, answering your question in 2 parts, but LAIKA does, we have some women that represent LAIKA and women in animation, and I know there's they meet up with other women from other studios, even like storyboard artists from that work in LA and stuff. So there is this kind of like bigger network of women kind of like talking and trading what their experiences are like, and like becoming more of like just broadening our network, which is, it's like kind of going back to internships. Like, when I interned, I knew no one at Leica House, and I was only there for 3 months on an internship, and I made at first I was like, these are like family, and then as I was in stop motion, I was like, oh, everyone says family, but it is like family. Like Katie and Margaret and Julie from HouseSpecial, like all those people have become like my role models, and like maybe getting emotional role models, and like kind of sounding boards, like as I've continued my journey. So I interned for like 3 months, and then I went away back to Georgia to work with zombies, and then I got hired back because I guess I left a good enough impression. Yeah. I got hired back when Leica House and Leica were separating, and so Leica House became its own company, which is HouseSpecial. And just coming back, and I wasn't even in a fabrication role. I was doing client services PA. I was just like, yeah, I want to just be in the world. Honestly, like an internship or a PA position, like it might not be the ideal position you want, but it is such a good opportunity to get in to
I will
networking.
Totally second that. Like, if you want to be in the stop motion community, then do what there's a space for.
Yeah.
Because there's not very many animator positions.
Yeah.
But when I first started and I got to be an intern, I said, what does everybody hate? What can you not fill? And they said, nobody wants to make molds. And I said, teach me how to make molds. And I've worked ever since.
Yeah. Yeah. Same. Client services. I got really good at folding napkins for a while and turned into translating to being a great fabricator. But yeah. And so in that, yes, kind of going back to your other question, like, you know, and making your way up, kind of taking the opportunity that is there, regardless if it's something you want, if what you want is to be in the industry, taking an opportunity that might not be what you want, but is a way in is totally fine. I think there's a lot of, you know, when I was PA, there's like some shame. Yeah, I'm doing this. It's not really what I want to do. No one up above is like, oh, judging. And they're like, great, let's teach you. Let's like show you
on the
around.
team.
Yeah, you're part of the team. And in that way, you're talking about resources in Portland or in the community or in the U.S. or whatever. It's like, whatever industry you want to be in, if you just work hard, like Katie was saying, what Whitney has said, if you just work hard, have a great attitude, like,
And get lucky.
Yeah, honestly. but that luck kind of comes with like being hardworking.
Well, if you get that lucky spot, you better keep hold of it.
And in that's where like you start to build your community and, you know, like your role models or people in that industry that you want to be in this case, stop motion, that you can kind of use to start your networking and all that. So I know that's hard. It's like you have to get in to just start, but just keep looking out for opportunities. There's always opportunities. Yeah.
One last question as we're wrapping up. How has technology changed in your time in your profession? Have you noticed things evolving digitally or?
Well, I'll answer because I've been doing it the longest. When I first started in the 90s, things were shot on film, and we would shoot a film, and then it was someone's job to drive that to Seattle and get it. Would they wait around for 6 hours? I feel like they may have even driven it, waited around, and drove it back. And then at 9 o'clock in the morning, everyone would watch dailies, and you'd be so excited, and you'd watch what was on the film, which hopefully was good. And we had lunch boxes. Those were brand new. So you could scroll back for like 3 frames of your animation, look at 3 frames. I was after frame grabber. Or sorry, no, what was the surface gauges?
I'm like, I came to you in 2014, Katie, as an intern. I don't know.
And then it was digital. And then I was in the first phase of Will Vinton Studios after clay, and we were introducing foam latex. And we had people from Nightmare Before Christmas, and that was brand new foam latex. What a big, like, oh my gosh. And then that turned into silicone, and then that has turned into RP, and lots of facial, lots of stuff happening in the computer first. So all the computer stuff is new. And then now AI is starting to be a thing, and it's starting to be a real thing. And that is interesting.
AI to your benefit of research and development, or in what realm?
Nope.
No.
In post, and somebody's replicating something?
It's very easy for AI to look, for someone to be like, oh, make a stop motion thing in AI, and it can look like stop motion. So that's like, yeah, kind of going from like talking about like, this is like how the artist, how stop motion was, and then like, oh no, we're here now. And so it's really lucky that people still want to watch stop motion in this like Terminator AI time. And yeah, it's scary. So technology is kind of scary, and in so many ways can help stop motion. Like we use Dragon Frame, and it's like an amazing capture station for animators and set dressers and lighting people on stage crew to use and all that. So it's like in those ways, technology is amazing. And even in the amount of time I've been working on stage crew, it's gotten better and better. But yeah, it's like,
I
how
think it's
lucky are we to
time
keep
and
working?
time and expense is what. So you can make something in AI with one or two people, and it's a good enough finished product that people are accepting of it. And you say, well, I could do that too. It'll take me 6 months and
Yeah, yeah,
it'll cost this much. Or it'll take me 6 days and it'll cost this much. And even though the real thing is so cool and everyone would love to do it, just the money is starting to be there less and less.
Yes, a way that we started using technology, we did it on In the Know. We had our set designers build the set in 3D. So we could digitally fly a camera in, and we could change the camera lens and frame up shots to make sure that the draft plan of the set build was going to be enough to cover the whole frame. So we wouldn't have to do set extensions with VFX because we had a very small budget. And so in art department, we're always trying to think about post and what can we do to minimize post, because it's always a very big expense at the end of a project. And so this gave us the ability to go in and fly this camera into these sets and look and prove the animatic, prove that the way that the director and the storyboard artist had portrayed these certain angles, that we were building a set that could actually make that work. And usually that's something that we don't do digitally. Usually we build the set and then we have what we call a carcass meeting or a mid-build review. It kind of depends on which studio. They've got different names for it. But it's basically the plywood version of the set before any textures or anything has been put on it. And you sort of stand in front of it with all the HODs, and usually the director of photography, he's got a camera and he's trying to prove those things out. And you've got either stand-ins or, rough puppets. Sometimes it's just an armature just to sort of set them in there, just to sort of prove it out. And it's fine to do it that way, but you've already spent a lot of money and cut a lot of materials at that point. And so if we can find those savings early on, to cut down on the amount that we need to build, then that means that we can use that money for something else. And we can spend that money maybe on maybe we have this one asset that needs to be really complicated, or we need to really dig into the engineering of how this is going to work for the animator. That would free up extra money for us to spend on trying to sort those details out. So, technology and AI, it can be helpful and it can be hurtful, but it's all about intention. And just really thinking about, how are we using this? Because the questions are going to come up, so how are we doing this? But, for us in art, we do a lot of reference images. I do it in puppets too. You're like, okay, we're trying to figure out what the style of the film is. And a lot of times you might be on Google or Pinterest or something looking at all these images. And now with AI, there's so many of them that are AI generated. And that gets to be kind of tricky because when you're looking for reference, you want to have reference from the real world. And you want it to be something that's based in reality, from the light to the color to the textures. And with all this new AI coming in, it just makes it a little bit harder to discern sometimes. But we always want to go back to using the art, using real photographs, using real art as opposed to AI generated, because we want to be respectful of that world and make sure that we're using that as the basis of our designs as much as possible.
You guys being here and sharing your backstory is a testament to community building and paving the way for the next generation. Just a little backstory on our festival. It was founded upon two female forces, Dee Denton and Joan Sappington. We definitely have a steering committee that is trusting and transparent and helps everyone feel supported. And I think that's why it's been one of the longest running festivals on the West Coast. It's in its 63rd year this year.
It's amazing.
And you guys being together and sort of help build this exhibit, the audience will learn about those 4 stages in stop motion: pre-production, fabrication, production, and post. On site, we're going to have scripts, maquettes, storyboards, armatures, a vintage Will Vinton set, along with Paranorman's bedroom, a small Abbott and Elementary set, along with some Oscar-winning Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio pieces. We're super excited. And also make sure you reserve seats. There's limited seating, live animation talks from the pros. Some name dropping here. Anthony Scott.
Yeah, my buddy.
Yeah. Ardman's Hannah Brooks. She's a junior animator, about her clay experiences with Grommet and Morph, which is super cool. Webster Colcord, who came from Will Vinton Studios, started, but is now at Tippett Studios. We'll also have Brian Hansen, who worked on Fantastic Mr. Fox and also Pinocchio. And Melanie Coombs, awesome producer, and so many more that we are super excited. So come celebrate, support the arts this June 20th through 22nd. A big shout out to Digital One Studios for helping make this podcast possible. And thanks to this year's media sponsors for helping share our stories this year: Animation Magazine, Grapevine Outdoor, KGW, Kink.fm, Lake Oswego Review, Lamar, and the Oregonian Media Group.
Thanks for having us, Tiffany. This has been wonderful.
Thank
Absolutely
you so
wonderful.
much.
And I have to say, like, major shout out to bringing all the studios together. It's not very often we get an opportunity to share a stage in this way and be featured in this way and really talk about the ins and outs of the studio and what studio life is like. So thank you for allowing us to be here. This has been really special and meaningful. So thank you.
Super
It's so
thankful.
great.
Thank
so
you
great.
so much.